If you've ever said something honest at work and seen the room go completely still, if you told your manager that you wanted more from something or potentially a raise, but somehow between that conversation that you had with them, you started to look like you are being restless. And unfortunately, it was never a policy, it's actually a bill. And this bill turns up differently at a different price depending on who you are. Hello, if you are new here, my name is Shana and this is Breaking the Timeline. By the end of this episode, you are going to have a test that you can run through in exactly 4 seconds before you decide to say that honest thing that tells you whether you are being yourself, handing something over. Now, the question that I always get from you and people around me, and especially early career professionals, is how much of me goes into this. Now, that's mainly because of the stigma that comes across most of our professionals, and it gets split into 2 distinctive categories. We've got our authentic self, but also our professionality. So being authentic and being professional. And sometimes combining the 2 can cause a little bit of friction. Now, the issue is, especially when we first start out, nobody actually gives a concrete definition of what authentic means and what does it mean to be a professional. And even though those 2 things maybe have its simple definition, the definition of this will look different compared to your sector, your job, and who you also report to. I don't know about you, but that is really confusing. And for somebody who is trying to navigate their world in this new career or build something for them, that's not very helpful. Now, I remember the first time I trained to become a teacher, I got told 2 different messages. I remember sitting in a lecture and one person who came in, and I think he was a visiting lecturer, he said, if you show up as yourself, if you smile before Christmas, then you have automatically failed. Now, educators who are probably listening to this and trained quite early, you probably got the same talk. Now, I remember saying this to one of my mentors in a school when I was obviously training. And they actually laughed at me and said, Shana, that is like the worst advice anybody can give you. You need to turn up and be exactly who you are. Show your authentic self. Be that person who's just being you so you can shine and be absolutely different compared to other teachers. Now, both of those recommendations, I can understand where they came from. If you turn up to be your authentic self, you are building positive relationships with others, and people get to build this type of trust in you. At the same time, I know that I had a professional standard to apply. And if I came the same way that I would say with my friends, that is always bubbly, always has this big energy, humor attached to her, then some people in my workplace and even maybe the children that I was working with at that time might find that a little bit uncomfortable. So we've got 2 different ideas here. We've got, should I be a professional and start to mask specific areas of myself which make me mean? Or should I turn up to be my authentic self and just show all the different colors and all the different aspects I can bring within this role? Now, this is something that I actually got wrong for many, many years. And unfortunately, it's because I didn't have a clear direction that somebody was pointing towards, or maybe gave me a little bit more time to give me a definition so I could make the decision myself. Now, today, I want to tell you exactly what I managed to do. And what is that simple 4-second test that I run through every single time before I'm about to say something, but also potentially sharing stuff in public as well. But before I get into that, I need to separate 2 things into what we usually get as one word, because until you actually split this, none of this actually works. So the 2 separate things that I want to talk about today, and it comes under that category of being yourself at work. And that phrase it can just mean so many different things to so many people. And I think that is the issue because it is down to interpretation. But I want to give us today a little bit of clarity of what this actually could show up to be and what this actually means. So the first kind of word or phrasing that I want to kind of separate this into is character. Now, character is all about how you speak, what you care about, what you refuse to do, and maybe some of the decisions that you decide to make. So I want you to really think about when we're looking at a character, think about a cartoon. What do they look like? How do they show up? And do they do things a little bit different? Do they show up in that episode as a completely different person in comparison to somebody else, even though they are in the same plot? Now, that is your character. And all of us are going to have different characters depending on our experience, depending on where we've been brought up, our cultural differences, race, gender, all of those things come into those intersectionalities that make us who we are. Now, the other side of showing up, being yourself at work is actually disclosure. Now, disclosure is telling people things. This is that giving information to people about your private life, what you are currently doing, what you are struggling with. Is there anything that you are planning or building with? So if some people, especially in the content creation space, you might know this as building in public. Now, the issue that we come across all the time when it happens for building in public is that we don't really know what we should be sharing. Are we going to be sharing all the areas in our life? Because is that not what building in public is all about? Are we going to tell people what we're thinking about? What is the new adventures that we are on? And I think where this becomes tricky is because we sometimes overshare and don't know how to come back from it. Now, the first one that I went over when you're talking about your character is actually what builds your career itself. This is your differentiator that makes you be that unapologetic individual that somebody else cannot copy, because this is your uniqueness. This is what you can bring to the table, and somebody else might try and copy it, but they can't because you've got your distinctive character. And you should be utilizing that as the most. It is the reason that somebody is able to describe why you are there and why somebody else isn't. So part of this process, which I like to talk about all the time, is that we are banking our evidence. So if, for example, you were in a meeting with a manager or a leader, depending on what you call it in your industry, they are able to specifically talk about you and talk about what you can bring. And that is based within your character itself about what you care about, what you have made a decision about, maybe how you turn up to yourself. But without those specifics and specific evidence, this person is not going to be able to do that. So we want to make sure that we have that area and we are building it as much as possible. Now, the second one, okay, this is what gets recorded. And recording is the bit nobody mentions when they tell you to be open. Now, with the recorded section, it can go both ways. It can be very positive. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story in a second about that. But this can be somebody noticing something that you have done outside of work or within work itself because you're being very vocal, you're building in public, and they are excited about what you bring. They tend to then tell other people that other person is excited to what you bring. All of that can come together in a very positive way and actually can support the other side, your character, because it's helping with your career development as you move forward. But depending on what you decided to share and what you have decided to bring forward could unfortunately be a negative response. Now, the thing I would like you to sit with, disclosure that outlives the context it was said in. You said it on a Thursday potentially, and you realized that you potentially was exhausted after work. You were kind of just word vomiting is what we say. in regards to what you would have liked to share. And unfortunately, that thing that you shared is still remembered 18 months later, the same way that you brought it up on that specific day. Now, when you are that person who is no longer in the room, this is the detail that somebody is able to recall and bring to them. And unfortunately, it's not great that we have that, because we want to show up as a certain way and we are building that character in order for us to do that. But once we have a disclosure and we are telling people specific things, this is what they do. This is what they remember. So we've got to kind of put a test or stress test the type of things that we are bringing towards the table and actually talking about. So the things that people can remember is the things we want them to remember. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story now, just so you get a little bit more context in regards to what I am speaking about. So I've been obviously running this podcast not very long, but I used to have another podcast previous to this, which is called The PE Aid. And I remember started this channel because I thought, yeah, that would be a very good idea to share a lot of what I'm doing, but not just for like my senior lecture background, but also towards maybe my prospective trainee teachers who might be seeing this. So just to give you a little bit of context of what that was, it was based specifically on physical education, curriculum development, and just building as a teacher. It was very niche, very specific. Now, I thought at the specific time that this was something that I needed to do with my role. And it was exciting, don't get me wrong, but I didn't think it would kind of be seen by specific people. It's the internet. Of course it's going to. So I was a little bit naive thinking that that was not actually going to show up. But anyways, I remember coming in one day and I had a meeting with one of my leaders and they said, "Oh, I saw your episode the other day. It's great work that you're doing." And I'm telling you now, the amount of doubt and shock that came to me at that specific point, I don't think I can even paint a picture about it, because all I was worrying about is, what on earth did I say? I couldn't recall anything, even though I knew I had researched, I practiced and probed some specific points that I wanted to bring up in that specific episode, but I just went in complete panic mode. Now, luckily for me, I made sure that I wasn't saying anything that could tend to cause any harm towards my career itself. In fact, I was talking about things that brought me into a better light. To make me look like, say, this expert who was showing up and giving extra material, extra insights for other people within my specific niche. And this is the thing that the person always remembers about me, because even now, till when I have these informal decisions, and I want to give you context, I have now been in this position for 2 years. Okay. This person still remembers that specific episode. So it goes back to my saying, we need to be able to start talking about stuff and disclosing information that we are happy for, say, our friend, for their friend, for our co-worker, for our other people to actually want to talk about. And we are feeling comfortable about that. Now, one thing I want to make clear, because when it comes to this disclosure thing, automatically a lot of us are going to sit there and start to think, okay, because I would like to be known as this specific person, I'm not going to show the other side of me. And unfortunately, this is still not going to do us any good, because remember, we've got that character building here. That character itself is what's going to allow us to develop further in our career. So this is a section where I talk about a little bit, and this things that I see a lot when I'm working with people and talking to them, is that you are editing yourself and erasing yourself are not the same move. So let's talk about erasing ourselves first. And it's just exactly like a rubber. I'm going to use the analogy because I think that's the easiest way for me to really explain it. Now, when we are erasing ourselves, we are then taking away different aspects, different opinions from what anybody else would have. So think of a rubber. Say I wrote the word, say, breaking the timeline in pencil, and I decided to rub out the entire thing. Unfortunately, and if we've got a really good rubber, that information now is going to be lost. Nobody's going to be able to see it. That thing is no longer going to show up. So when we think about what we are bringing to the table, nobody will be able to recall that specific thing. Now, when it comes to editing yourself, you are potentially just making small changes. You might decide to edit one specific area and instead of changing the whole thing. So I'm going to give a little bit more of an example of what that specific thing might be in regards to changing what we're doing instead of erasing. So I might have a specific opinion about, say, the way that the curriculum has been built. I might decide that I have a specific opinion on this that I would like to share. Now, the version of me who likes to be very outspoken and likes to get things sorted might go in a moment and address it into a big meeting. That I can decide to erase, and I will never speak up in a meeting. And unfortunately, then my opinion is now lost and nobody gets to hear my unique point. Now, editing. Instead of just turning up, shouting the loudest in the meeting, I might decide to do things slightly different. So instead of just being opinionative against what somebody has suggested, I might understand what they are doing and what their perspective is and compare it to my perspective. What are the pros? What are the cons? How did we finalize that specific decision? And just kind of differentiate between the two. Then is also coming up with the receipts. Why am I having this opinion? Is there a specific thing that I have read? Have I spoken to a specific student, for example, or trialed something different there? So then it makes my opinion have a little bit more substance there, isn't it? Because I'm coming now with a little bit more facts instead of just relying on my sole opinion. So the version of me, if just turning up and just stating everything that I wanted, just saying, this is my opinion, I would like to do this, sometimes can come across a little bit argumentative. And I know that as a person who is very argumentative. So I've noticed sometimes in specific places that I might need to adjust how I do certain things, not to fit in, but in order for my character to come out the way I actually want it to. I am somebody who has a lot of unique ideas and I have a lot of creativity that I can bring to the table. But if I take that disclosure come out the way I don't want it to come out, that's the thing that that person is always going to remember. And unfortunately, it is so hard to get rid of. Disclosure sometimes cannot be erased, whereas a character, it can be edited. All right. So I've given you a little bit of context now, and I've told you the main two areas of what we need to think about when we're talking about being yourself at work. We've got our character and we've also got disclosure, and both of them turn up slightly different depending on how we bring it forward, but also how we present it. And both of them are so important in regards to building our career. But what I want to move on to right now is actually the 4-second test, which I would like you even to try this week and take away to kind of allow you to utilize that character and also the disclosure, but in a positive way that shows up to make you get to where you need to be. Because we're not here to change you. We're here to bring those aspects into you, but just teach you a little bit of how to do that effectively. So the first thing I want to run through, I suggest you write this down so you can reflect on this a little bit later. Now, the first one is, does this need to be known or do I need to be heard? Now, that's a question I want you to really sit with, and it's the first one that makes your decision. Now, if the answer is no, then we don't obviously go to the next one. That's simple as that. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of context to this. So sometimes we might have a specific opinion or specific feeling that we feel that the world needs to know. but we don't actually kind of sit there and think a little bit deeper as to why does the world need to know this. So this can go in hand in regards to your career, in regards to speaking to your friends, your family, or if you're someone like me building on the side online, this is the best question that you can be asking yourself. So if you actually need to be heard, workplace is the wrong room for it. And that's usually when you have some type of emotion attached towards it, or maybe a disagreement or a really deep feeling about something. Now, I'm going to suggest that you take that to a friend, a community member, maybe within our community itself, if you've got an online coach or somebody that you speak to about difficult situations, that is the right place to be, because you want to kind of disclose something without any filters so somebody can just listen to you. And sometimes we need that in our careers because we're holding so much information, impact, and we just need somebody just to wait and listen. Now, being heard is not lesser than need, and I want to make that very, very clear here. It just needs an audience that isn't also assessing you, because sometimes when we have that person who is assessing, they might take these things into consideration. Now, you might hear them say, oh, whatever's in our conversation, it's just going to be between us. Do not fall for that trap, because unfortunately, if they're giving you a grade, if they are making you say have a promotion in regards to that, they have to take everything into consideration. Okay, so the second one that I want to bring to your table today, and this is, would I be comfortable with things in writing, in a file, read back to me in 2 years by someone who wasn't there? Now, this is very heavily down towards that disclosure thing. And realistically, this is all about, what do I want to be remembered for? And do I want somebody quoting to say, okay, Shana said this on this date, so we need to kind of bring that towards the table. Now, again, this is not for us to kind of sugarcoat or potentially erase a specific area of what we like to say, but we want to make sure that what we are disclosing and saying out loud is something that we want somebody to remember us for. And I'm telling you now, this takes a lot of practice. And even me saying this to you right now is someone who is still trying to practice this, because it's very, very difficult to maybe stop yourself mentioning a specific thing and thinking about the long-term consequences of this. But I really suggest you give a go at this, because we want us to be building this environment, this career, this establishment, especially if we're having this portfolio career that we are trying to build. We want us to be shown up in a specific way. So we need to be able to be speaking to the right people and telling them the right things for what we actually want to be remembered for. All right, I'm going to give you now your third one, and this is, am I giving information or am I giving leverage? So your plans, your ambition, your struggles, and your limits are all just information until someone can use them to decide something about you. And I want you to kind of let that sit with you a little bit on there. Now, I know we have colleagues that we are very, very close with. I've got them myself, and with some of them, I have a deeper kind of friendship with. These specific people that I have friendship with, they might see a specific part of me. However, I still decide on what to give out. And again, I think this is not just within your career and people you work with, but even people show up online. I'm someone who actively builds in public. I am somebody who actively likes to share, what am I doing? What am I learning? But I don't decide to share every little thing, because I don't know when this can potentially, say, bite me on the bum. I don't know when somebody can potentially use this as potential leverage in the same sentence to somebody who's maybe making a decision about me later on. So I decide on what I share. Use this question to really make you understand, are you just trying to give everything about you? Is there a need to do that? Or are you trying to tell people all your secrets? Because secrets, unfortunately, are the way for somebody to eventually control you. And you don't want that. You want to be the leader of your own path and showing up the way that you were entitled to do. Okay, so the constructive part of this is actually the important bit. And the payoff is going to help you a little bit longer. Now, everything that I mentioned before, it isn't saying that you need to be closed off and you can't be who you want to be. But instead, what I'm saying is that we need to be selective and show up and share what we want to be remembered for. Now, the thing that we're probably being loud about at the moment is the wrong category, and it isn't the thing that's going to move us forward. However, the category that we should be sharing and showing off more is what we call our evidence record of everything that we can bring to the table and make us look different, that character, compared to everybody else. Now, I'm going to give you 3 specific entries and points I want you to start doing and exercising. And this is something that I obviously teach in my masterclass, which you can access, and I'll put the link below. But it is a catastrophic element and practice, a habit that you should be taking each week, which is going to help you and support you in the long run. So when we're doing this record, these are 3 things that I want us to think about. What you did, what changed, and how are you going to prove it? So what you did could be as simple as I started a new AI bot, which allowed me to take the summary of my meeting. So I did not need to spend too much time with the summary of minutes. What impact did that make? Well, it saved time. It allowed me to focus on other areas in my industry or my business. So I'm not taking that time to be completing specific admin tasks. And what proves it? Well, the time itself. I'm giving more time to other areas that need a little bit more focus on. I can see that I'm not spending so much time because the AI is doing it so quickly. And I'm also potentially getting response from my leaders, from my colleagues, and seeing how I'm completing tasks a lot quicker. And this is something that can actually be documented. So that version of transparency actually pays back in long term. Now, I kind of go back to that disclosure comment that I made before in regards to when you are in a room and somebody is maybe talking about you or giving information about you, what do you want them to say? And these are those specific things. These are the things that you should be sharing, being loud about in conversations, in emails, so you can get recognized for those areas to make that development. Because we know our managers are probably going to have, say, 20 minutes of time to really give to us. And they've got so many people underneath their belts that they also need to remember. So if we are giving them the specific areas that you want them to remember every single time, this is where the impact is actually going to make. So I really challenge you to start building that evidence track. And again, if you want to know a little bit more about that, I run this in my masterclass, which I will put a link in below this video for you to be able to access, because I really believe if there's one thing that we need to start talking about and saying a little bit louder about, is what we bring to the table. But we need to be able to put this in a point that somebody's going to believe and somebody is going to remember. So challenge you to try those 3 points this week and think about what you could actually do and how you can make this be. So I want to kind of leave you now for a little bit of a reflection before we kind of finish off today's office time. And you need to really sit there and think about how much of me goes into this. Is it all of my character? Is it selective parts of my character? What do I really want people to remember me for? And is it for the right reasons? And I think sometimes we might need to sit there and look at our goals, because I think with our goals, it's going to tell us the direction that we need to lead to. What do we need to show and what do we want to talk about each time? And if it does, for example, select one area, how do I present that is the next thing. Do I speak about it openly to people? Do I strategically go away, find the facts, maybe build a presentation around it? Is this on a one-to-one conversation with somebody that is actually got the power to make any differences? So I want you to really include that a little bit in what we do. All right, so I'm going to end it here today with this specific episode because I think I've spoken about a lot today. We spoke about what it really means to show up as ourselves at work and really kind of breaking down that category and speaking about what is the character side and what is our disclosure side. But we also spoke about evidence tracking, why that's important, why we might need evidence tracking, and the 3 questions or the 3 lines that we should be writing down every single week. So we are going to start looking a little bit deeper into these areas. And I really suggest that you take some time and writing this down. Now, for us to be able to build this community, we need to make sure that this message goes out to others. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow as we go along, and share this to somebody, another early career professional who is trying to not just build their career, but career is just one part of their aspect. And they're trying to build an entire life, build every aspect that's going to make them be you and show up as their most authentic self. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to see you very soon.